Good afternoon, students. वेलकम बैक। सर हमारा रिकॉर्डिंग स्टार्ट नहीं हुआ है शायद। सर आपने रिकॉर्डिंग स्टार्ट किया है?
Recording in progress.
Yeah. Hello, students. So, welcome back to our direct tax, income tax classes. So, first of all, I hope you all have gone through our previous sessions discussions, and I'm sure you are ready with your further questions and doubts for this session. Yeah. Thank you, Praveen. The subject itself is very interesting. So I'll just brush through what we discussed in the previous session. And then if anybody has any questions or doubts, we'll take up your questions, doubts, or we'll proceed. So we are on this head of income called as income from house property, which basically covers the rental income, if I have to put it in simple words in short. Now this head is designed in such a fashion that you will be taxing only the rental income, which is over here called as the annual value. So your one-time income from sale of the property is not covered over here. The regular income, the income which you will accrue, which you will get, which you will earn on regular basis is what will be covered over here. That is what this head is mainly dealing with. So first comes the format. The format is simple. Since we want to compute income, income is computed by taking receipts minus expenses because we are talking about income. So income is the net concept. So receipts minus expenses. Over here, receipts is this, which is termed as GAV, and expenses are termed as deductions. You have total in all 3 items which are allowed as deduction. So expenses are broadly allowed here under 3 categories only. Now, what is important to understand, students, is purposefully in the question, they may give you expenses beyond these. So they may give you expenses like land rent. They may give you expenses like depreciation of the property. They may give you expenses like repairs and maintenance of the property. None of this would find place. That is the importance of the format of each head. And that is why the law has created different heads so that it could devise different formats, different provisions for each head and its working. I hope this is clear. Now, moving ahead. Now, when you talk about these expenses, there are certain things that have to be thoughtfully taken care of and remembered while solving. First is the municipal tax. You can call it as property tax. Now, this municipal tax will be allowed only if it is paid, and it should be paid by the owner. If nothing is mentioned, you can always assume these 2 things. But otherwise, the rule is it will be allowed only if it is paid, and payment should be done by the owner, not by the tenant. Then comes the deduction, where the first deduction is your standard deduction. Standard means fixed. Standard deductions are those for which no specific expense details would be given in the sum. These are automatic. So you have to always remember that whether or not anything is given in the sum, you have to by your own self consider this deduction. That is what we mean by standard. Now, interestingly, the third deduction, which is for interest, that is on accrual basis. So interestingly, within the same head, one expenditure is allowed on payment basis. The other expenditure is allowed on accrual basis. So that is the beauty of the subject. That is the beauty of this particular head of income. Fine. This is the list of those items which are allowed as exempt in certain cases. So these are the HP incomes in specific cases where the particular assessee is given the special benefit of exemption and not required to pay tax. Fine. Now in the charging section, if you recall, we discussed few very important and interesting pointers. First, what is taxed under this head is not the one-time value. It is the regular value, which is over here termed as annual value. You may cover rent, you may cover higher charges. It can be named as anything. But what is covered over here is the regular rental value and not the one-time value. Over here, it is termed as annual value. The second most important point is annual value of what? So rental value of property would be covered. What should be the property? The property may be a building, any building. So we discussed over this. It may be a residential building, a commercial building, a let-out building, a self-occupied building. For the time being, everything is covered. Then we will go to the exceptions, what are not covered. So first of all, everything is covered. Now, any building is covered over here with some exceptions, and only that land which is part of the building is covered. So what is not covered is vacant land. So if you have given vacant land which is not attached to any building, then that rent is not covered over here. It may be covered under other sources. It may be covered under business side, depending upon what is the nature of holding that particular land. Now, the next item, which is again important, is what will be taxed under this head is rental income only if you are owner of that property. In case you yourself are tenant, which is called as subletting. So you have taken the property on rent and now you are further giving it on rent, which is called as subletting. This will not find place under this head. It will be under the head other sources or again PGBP, depending upon what is the nature of your ownership or holding of that property. So broadly, three conditions: rental value, that is not one time but regular value, then of any building, and of only vacant land, not vacant land, but land which is attached to the building is covered. And then you should be owner, which is the registered owner, or some specified cases which is termed as deemed owner. Now there are some exceptions where even though you satisfy these three conditions, we will not cover you, we will not tax you under the head HP. You will be covered under some other head. In this, the first category is composite letting. Composite letting means along with your house property, what is given on rent is some assets or facilities. So this is what is the meaning of composite, and the meaning of inseparable is that where giving both these things together is compulsory by your contract. It is not optional. So it is not your choice whether to give it or not, but that is a requirement, that is a demand. And if that is the case, it is called as inseparable. If the letting is separable, that is giving of both these things together was optional and the tenant has opted for it, in that particular case, the rent of both these would be split. HP rent would come under the head house property and this would go under the head other sources. However, where it is inseparable, that is giving of both is compulsory, generally it will find place under the head business, because those people who are into the business of giving such composite items on rent would be doing this. So that is what is our first exception, where this type of rent is not covered under the head HP. Then comes another important exception where you are running your own business in a particular property. So in that particular property, you are running your own business. See, I'm adding this word own, which is not appearing here, but that is what is mainly this particular point dealing with. So where you are running your own business. In any property, that particular property is not covered under the head HP. Whatever are the incomes or expenses arising from that property, that would be covered under the head PGBP. Now comes the first most important point, which I'm sure will find place in your exam paper in the form of a case study type of question mainly. That is where you are engaged in the business of giving properties on rent. So where giving properties on rent is what is the nature of your business. So your business is letting. So you have purchased multiple properties in different areas and these are given by you on rent, and giving on rent is your business. Now in this particular case, there are two different possibilities. The properties which you are giving on rent, whether it is a commercial property or it is a residential property. If it is a commercial property that you are giving on rent, in that particular case, the rule is the rental income would be covered under the head PGBP. However, if it is a residential property which you have given on rent and giving on rent is your business, in that particular case, now as per the latest budget, that is what has been already passed, this particular rent of a residential property will not be covered under the head business. It has been specifically excluded from there and it has been included under the head house property. So now the rent of a residential house where giving this on rent is your business is now not going to be covered under the head business, but will be covered under the head house property. So now the differentiating factor is the nature of property. So one thing is common, you are in the business of giving properties on rent, and whether the property is a commercial property or a residential property, that is where the head would change. I suppose there is some question in the chat box. So Praveen is asking me, sir, whether any other municipal tax like water tax or any other thing given in the question we should consider. See, water tax, sewerage tax, all these are part of municipal tax only, beta. So that will be deducted along with your municipal tax. Generally, they are called as municipal tax only. So that is why generic term is used, municipal tax, which will cover water tax, sewerage tax. So even if that is given separately, we consider it as municipal tax and the treatment is same. Now, Sania is asking, sir, what is meant by property held as stock in trade? Okay. Now, see, that is a scenario which I have not yet covered, not yet discussed, because there is nothing special about it. It will be taxed under the head house property only. But the question is, what is property held as stock in trade? So please understand, you are a builder developer. You are in the business of selling properties. So you have constructed a building having multiple flats or shops, out of which let us say there are total 50 flats, 45 have been sold out. 5 are lying unsold with you. So these 5 flats which are lying unsold with you will be categorized in your books of accounts as your stock in trade. Now this is of one of your buildings. You may be having multiple buildings and multiple flats in those buildings. So all the unsold flats which are lying with you are called as property held as stock in trade. Now please understand one thing. Selling of property is your business, correct? So whatever income you'll get from selling the property, that is by default going to go to PGBP. We are not concerned with that. We are concerned with the annual value only. So the annual value of these properties which are held in stock in trade will be falling under the head HP only because they have not been shown as exception. So please be clear. If you are holding any property as stock in trade, that is you are in the business of selling those properties. Till the time they are unsold, they are held by you as your stock in trade. The sale value is not covered under HP because we have been discussing this right from the start. Only the annual value, that is the annually accruing value, is covered, not one-time value. So sale value will not be covered under HP. But for this same property, which is your stock in trade, till the time it is not sold, it is falling under the head HP. Yes, Hardik Beda, I am not getting into the technicals because I have not yet touched that particular point. That will go step by step. So I'm answering Sania's first basic question. That is, what is meant by property held as stock in trade? So this is what is the meaning. And first important thing is that property's annual value is covered under the head HP only. Now, whether he is asking, sir, even in residential house, there are lift security, but it is not composite rent. See, I'll explain this to you, Vaidhi. Even though you are having lift and security, please remember, Vaidhi, you are paying for it separately. How you are paying for it separately? Every month you are charged you are charged the maintenance separately. So you are paying rent separately, which is only for the flat, and for all this maintenance like security, like lift, like maybe power backup, you pay separately the maintenance charges. So that will not come in composite. But yes, the same scenario where the owner of the property is asking you to pay a lump sum rent in which he is covering the maintenance and all from his side. Generally, this does not happen. Generally, the tenant pays the maintenance. But let us say a case scenario where I, as a owner, is giving you that particular flat, and whatever is the maintenance, per month maintenance, I am paying from my pocket. It means now I am providing you a composite letting, which is generally considered as separable. Generally, because it is optional whether you have it or you don't have it. Means, in other words, it is not a choice generally. So it is generally considered as separable or part of that particular property only. It will not be considered as a distinct thing, and for that purpose, it will not go out of the HP head, because these are nowadays a part and parcel of the house only. I hope this is clear, beta. Praveen is asking me, sir, if in a case of a owner let out 2 residential house, 2 commercial, in this case, the 2 residential house will fall in HP, 2 commercial will fall in PGP. No, beta. Please understand. First, Praveen, you have to see whether letting out is your business. If yes, then you are letting out 2 residential house property, the rent is covered under HP head. The 2 commercial property let out, the rent will be covered under the PGP head. So both formats, both workings would be different. However, if you are not in the business of letting out, you as an investment were holding all these properties, as you are earning money, you are buying these properties, and now you are letting out these properties, then all the 4 properties, the 2 residential and the 2 commercial, both properties rent would fall under the head HP only. So if you mean in your question that normal and this, then you're right. So I'm answering your question for everybody's benefit because others are not able to see your question. So there are 2 residential properties, 2 commercial properties, all 4 properties are given on rent. Now, what will be the scenario? First, you have to check whether giving on rent is the business. If you are in the business of giving the properties on rent, then the 2 residential property rent is HP head, 2 commercial property rent is PGBP head. However, if you are not in that business, simply as investment, you are having those 4 house properties, then entire 4 house property, that is 2 residential and 2 commercial, all 4 house property rents would be covered under the head HP only. Is this clear, beta? Manvi, the person who owns the building need not also be the owner of the land upon which it stands. What does that mean? See, many times, beta, the land may be a leasehold land. Like in Mumbai and many other cities where the land is very costly, many times it happens that the land is not purchased by that person. It is taken on long-term lease, 99 years lease, and only the building is constructed. So in that case, Manvi, what you are saying is applicable. The person who owns the building need not also be the owner of the land. Fine, Manvi? Sir, municipal tax ki calculation repeat kar do. Bhavna, beta, there is no calculation for municipal tax. Municipal tax is always given in the question. You have to just check whether it is paid or outstanding. If it is outstanding, you will not consider. If it is paid, then only it will be deducted. And let us say it is said that 60% is paid, 40% is outstanding, then only 60% is deducted. So the simple point is there is no calculation. It is only that you have to check whether the conditions are satisfied. Is this clear? Okay. Excellent. Now, this is a theoretical part, because even if you are not the registered owner, still for the purpose of law and taxation, you are assumed to be owner. That is what is the meaning of deemed owner. Now, who is a deemed owner? The deemed owner is one where you have given your property to your spouse or to your minor child, and it is given without adequate consideration, like it is given by way of gift, etc. then in that particular case, even though they are the registered persons, however, you are assumed to be owner of such property. So on paper, documentally, it will be the property of that particular spouse or of your minor child or children. However, only for the purpose of levy of tax, it will be assumed that the property is owned by you. In other words, the rental income would be taxed in your returns. That is a simple meaning. Then second is holder of impartible estate, where you have got any property by way of inheritance. That is, a property is received as inheritance. And generally, it so happens in majority of cases that we do not get the property documents transferred in our name, because anyways, we are living in that property. We are the successors of that property. So many times it so happens practically, even it may happen in any of your case also, that you may not have got the property transferred in your name. In such a case, you are said to be holder of impartible estate. Impartible means for which partition is not yet done. In other words, it has not yet been transferred in your name. Fine. Then comes a very similar practical scenario where the property that you are owning is not in your name, but practically or in substance you are the owner. This is the case where you are holding or having that particular flat in a housing society. Now, in that particular case, you are practically the owner of that property. However, as per the housing society laws, the property is in the ownership of the housing society. And you are only given a letter of occupancy. That is, you become a shareholder first, and on the basis of becoming a shareholder, it is given to you as a occupancy. So practically you are the owner, but at least on paper you are not the owner. Hence the law presumes that since practically you are the owner, you will be treated as deemed owner for the taxation purposes. 1 second. Now, the next thing is income from property in possession of a person, which is in part performance of a contract. What is part performance of a contract? Part performance of a contract means where the property is not transferred in your name, but you have made the payment, the builder has given you keys, so you are having the physical possession of the property, only that for some reason, for some practical difficulty, the property documents are not yet made in your name. Again, this happens in many cases where in between the builder flees or because of some practical or legal reasons, the property documents could not be transferred to your name. Now, to protect your rights, there was a section inserted in this Transfer of Properties Act, as you can see on your screen, Section 53A. This Section 53A was brought in to protect your rights, where the Section 53A said that if you are having the physical possession of the property and you have paid the entire consideration, in that case, even though the proper documents are not in your name, we are going to deem that you are the owner. So in all these cases, you will find that you are not the real owner. The real owner is somebody else. So in the eyes of all laws, somebody else is the owner. Only while computing and charging tax, the income from such property would be added in your income, treating you as a owner. That is what this deemed owner concept means. The same thing is in case of the last scenario where you are holding rights in a building. What type of rights? These are the leasehold rights, and the lease is extending for 12 years or more. In such a scenario also, you are deemed owner of that property for that leasehold period, which is 12 years or more. Now, after reading or understanding the chargeability part, we need to understand the computation part. But before that, let me see. There are some questions. What is the difference between unrealized rent and arrears of rent? See, that day we had come across this term unrealized rent. Arrears of rent we are yet to come across, but fine. Since it is a question, I'll explain. Manvi has asked, what is the difference between unrealized and arrears? Unrealized rent means where the rent has become bad debts. So let us say some tenant was staying in your property. He was supposed to pay you rent. He defaulted 1 month, 2 months. You are waiting for him to pay. You are waiting for him to pay. And when you go there to check out, you suddenly find that the person has fled. That is, he has left, vacated your property. He is no more there. But he has bad debts because he has not paid your rent. So if let us say he has not paid your rent for 2 months, so that 2 months rent is now bad debts for you. It means it is a loss for you. That is the meaning of unrealized rent. Then comes another concept of arrears of rent. Now, please pay attention, students. Arrears many times is confused as outstanding rent. In fact, both are confused as outstanding rent. I had already made this clear last time also that unrealized rent is not outstanding. It is that outstanding which has now become bad. Second, arrears of rent. What is that? This generally happens practically in cases relating to government. I'll give you an example. Now, generally this happens in case of salary. There is a concept in salary called as arrears of salary. What is this? So let us say you are employed with government. Now, when you are employed with government, your pay scale is decided as per the report that the government gets from the various pay commission. Like you have the 5th pay commission, 7th pay commission, 8th pay commission. Now, these commissions are the expert bodies who are established by the government, who does the study on what is the present market scenario, what should be the correct remuneration or salary for a particular job. They submit this report to the government, and then the government implements this report. Now, it so happens that they have taken some period for doing the research. Then they have completed the report. They have submitted the report. Further, the government takes some time in implementing it. This may happen that they have given report for the year 22-23, and by the time it is implemented, it is 25-26. Now, in 25-26, government says, okay, I am implementing the rate which is suggested by the 7th pay commission, but that rate was suggested for the year or from the year 22-23. Now, this I am taking call now. Where if I am taking call now, I will say that I am implementing this new pay scale retrospectively from 22-23 because they have given this report for 22-23. Now, today, when I say that, okay, I am implementing this new pay scale, but retrospectively from 22-23, now 22-23, 23-24, you are already paid the salary at the old pay scale. Let us assume the old pay scale was 50,000 per month. This new pay scale suggested is 60,000 per month. So there is an increment of 10,000 per month. In this particular case, this 10,000 per month is accruing to you for past 2 years because this implementation has been done retrospectively. Now today, this past 2 years accrued amount of 10,000 per month is called as arrears of salary. Similarly, if in some renting scenario the same thing happens, let us say you and the tenant are in dispute on the rent. So you go to the court. The court takes 4 or 5 years to give the decision, and then the court says, yes, you were correct. The 50,000 rent should have been 60,000. So we pass the order that make the rent 60,000 and make it retrospectively from past 5 years because the case was filed 5 years back for that year's case. Now in this particular case, for entire past 5 years period, now you will get extra 10,000 per month as rent. This is called as arrears of rent. So I hope you all now understand the difference between 1, outstanding, 2, unrealized, which is bad debts, and 3, arrears. All 3 are different technically. Is this fine with all? Bhavna saying, sir, in first case, spouse is the deemed owner or husband. But it is the person who has transferred the property. So if I have transferred my property to my spouse, spouse is the real owner because now the property is standing in her name in all the records. but I am deemed owner because I have given to her without adequate consideration. That was done because I wanted to reduce my tax or evade my tax. Hence, in that particular case, the law says, even though it is standing in the name of the spouse, in all records and documents, spouse is appearing as the owner, but I will be charged with the income because I will be deemed owner of that particular property. Fine. Praveen is asking, sir, if Mr. A holds a residential building and he gives a power of attorney to B, in this case, Mr. B can be deemed owner even if Mr. B is not the family member. Yes, because that is because of the other scenario, that is part performance contract. So Praveen, what you are asking will be deemed owner, but that is because of the case of part performance contract. If it satisfies the condition of part performance contract, then Mr. B would be deemed owner. See, beta, Shruti, if you are saying in the fourth case, if we pay partly and we occupy the property, the point is, see, here we have not discussed the entire section 53A in detail. So you will get the answer for this in section 53 of Transfer of Properties Act, and over there part payment is not covered. Because in that particular case, technically you cannot be considered as owner of the full property because you have not paid the full amount. So practically it will not be covered as per the 53A. Sainath beta, arrears of house property will come under house property head. Arrears of salaries will come under salary head. So arrears of respective sources will come under the respective head. Now, if you're asking ki whether in reality do we get arrears of house property, I gave you a real life example, beta. What was my example? Your matter has gone into court, and we all know it may take 2 years, 5 years. And that time when the court will pronounce its order, if it is in your favor saying that yes, the rent should have been increased, when will the applicability of the decision will come? It will come applicable from day one. So in that case, today the court will pass an order saying that pay the difference of past 5 years. So in that case, beta, it will be arrears of rent coming under the head HP. Correct, sir? Okay. Now, coming to the computation part, as you would have seen in the format, the first computation is to be done of your receipts, which is over here called as your gross annual value. Now, actually, gross annual value should mean the rent which is actually earned. But here, please remember, in income tax, you will find that in some scenarios, you pay tax on notional incomes. Now, this is something interesting. One is real income. Real income is what you have actually earned in reality, which is coming to your bank account either earlier or later. But notional is something which will never come to your bank account because in reality, you have never earned this. This is assumed by the law, or because of the provisions of the law. In some scenarios, you end up paying tax on such income which you have not actually earned. So it is not your real income, it is notional. And you will find that in many scenarios, every head has such scenarios where you end up paying tax on the notional income. This is fine. Now, if you see the working of GAV, here itself you will find scenario where notional income may be taxed. What is that scenario? How do we find out GAV? So GAV calculation is you need to first find out two things. The first thing is you need to find out your expected rent, which is municipal rent or fair rent, whichever is higher. Now this is your expected rent until and unless the third figure is given in the sum, which is the standard rent. In case third figure is given in the sum, then higher of the first two figures should be compared with this third figure, which is standard rent. And now finally the expected rent is whichever is lower. As against this, what is actual rent, which is the second figure? Actual rent is the rent which you have actually earned. Now, how is this actual rent computed? It is the rent for the whole year, maybe received or receivable because we are not going by cash basis. So it can be either minus the rent which has become bad debts minus the rent for that particular period for those months when there was no tenant in your property, that is your property was vacant or idle. So let us say generally at the start of the year, if you have not got a tenant, then for first 1 or 2 or 3 months, there is no tenant. So that much period rent is your vacancy rent. So full 12 months rent minus the rent which has become bad debts. This will become bad debts only if the tenant has left. There are some conditions given in Rule 4. We'll read that later on as a theory part. So if those conditions given in Rule 4 are satisfied, then that rent is called as unrealized rent, which in simple words means bad debts, minus the rent for the period for which you are not having a tenant, that is the vacancy rent. Now, what is GAV? The general rule is GAV is higher of AR or ER, whichever is higher. Now, if AR is higher, then AR is GAV, no problem. But if ER is higher, they will say, wait, we will not consider ER directly as GAV. You do one thing, you make this calculation, which is you add back the vacancy rent to the actual rent which you are having. Now compare this figure with ER. Now, if after adding still ER is higher, then ER will be GAV. So after adding this particular total, still ER is higher, ER will be GAV. Now, if this total is higher, then AR will be the GAV. So GAV will be either AR or ER. This total will never become GAV. This total is made only for comparison purpose. Now, this we get from this particular point, that where actual rent is lower than expected rent due to vacancy, GAV is actual rent. So what is the meaning of due to vacancy? This is what is this calculation, which we all studied in our previous lecture with multiple case studies. So these were the case studies that we have studied. So till this point, we have done everything in our HP head. Now we are moving forward. In the format, after GAV, you have municipal tax. When you deduct that, you get NAV. When there is NAV, automatically 30% of NAV is your standard deduction. Please remember, student, in exams, if they have given no details in the sum, only the detail given is rent. Rent becomes your GAV, rent becomes your NAV, and then 30% has to be deducted. It means whether or not there is any other deduction of municipal tax or interest, you have to remember that always you have to deduct that 30% from the rent which you are receiving. So there may be a possibility like in 1 or 2 marks question or in a comprehensive question where HP is one small adjustment, they may only give you actual rent, nothing else. No ER details, no municipal tax details, nothing is given. Then in that particular case where only actual rent is given, that actual rent becomes your GAV, automatically it becomes NAV, and you have to always remember to deduct the 30%. So 30%, which is standard deduction, is very, very important because many times we may miss out on that. We may not remember to deduct it because it is not specifically given in the question. Is this fine, students? Now, after you have deducted standard deduction, the next deduction under section 24 clause B of the Income Tax Act, this deduction is deduction on account of interest. Now, the term they have used is interest on borrowed capital. You can simply say interest on loan. Now, what are the rules, the conditions, and the computation relating to this? We are going to understand henceforth. Fine. So today, we are going to go to the second spare part of this particular head's format, that is the computation of interest. Please pay attention. First point, it is not like municipal tax. That is, interest will be allowed as deduction whether or not you have paid it. So it will be allowed on accrual basis. However, interest on unpaid interest. So let us say you have not paid interest for a particular month. Generally, we pay interest in the installment. So every month you have installment. If you default in a particular month's installment, what they do, they levy interest on the outstanding interest. Why? Because you have made delay in the payment of your installment amount. So in that case, they will recover the outstanding interest with some additional interest, which is computed on the outstanding interest also. Please understand, the interest on the principal component only is eligible as deduction. Interest on interest is not eligible as deduction. I hope this is clear to you all. See, these are very small pointers. All these pointers are very important when it comes to computation of your income. That is in the exams. These small pointers create difference in right or wrong answer. Many times taxation paper is very tricky, not because there are any major calculations required. They are not there like costing and FM. Only in costing FM and in one or two cases of accounts, you have lengthy workings. In income tax, there are no lengthy workings, no formulae, nothing. But there are these small, minute conceptual points or minute technical conditions which you have to keep in mind and apply it in the given data. Many times these things are silent in the question. That is why you will find that in the taxation paper, mainly on the top of the paper, it is always written, make suitable assumptions. This is not written in other papers. Why it is written mainly in taxation paper? Because taxation is such a subject where such minute conditions are there, and the answer may change either way depending upon what is the fact given in the case. Now it is not possible, I'm using the word not possible, to give each and every minute fact in the question. That is why they say that make suitable assumptions. So wherever something is not given, like in case of municipal tax, it is not given whether it is paid or not. You assume it is paid. Whether it is paid by the owner or by the tenant, nothing is given. You assume it is paid by the owner. So these are the assumptions that you need to make in a taxation paper. And that is why it is specifically mentioned at the top of the paper itself. Next, when you take loan, you need to pay some processing fees. There may be some brokerage commission. None of these things are allowed. Similarly, when you buy property, you need to pay brokerage commission. Nothing is allowed, only interest on loan, and that also principal component is allowed. Now, most important point, the loan should be taken. Now I use this term, loan should be taken for HP. What I mean by this, the interest on such a loan will be allowed. Which interest will not be allowed? Where loan is taken for something by hypothecating the HP. So let us say loan you have taken for some personal expense, for some business expense, for buying something, and you have kept the house property as mortgage, as security. When loan is taken by simply keeping the house property as security, by hypothecating it or by mortgaging it, that interest is not eligible for deduction. The point is you are computing income from that house property. So the expenses of on that house property only is eligible. So where the loan is taken for the house property, for any purpose of the house property, that loan's interest is only eligible. So the purposes are also given. Either it may be for purchasing the property, that is acquiring it, or for constructing it, or for repairing it, or even for renovation, renewal. So anything which is for the house property is eligible. But you're taking loan for some other purpose, as I mentioned, personal use, for marriage in the family, or for your business, and only the security which you have kept is the house property, then it is not eligible for this deduction. I hope you are getting the logic. See, as far as possible, try to understand the provisions by understanding the background logic. It will be helpful in keeping the provisions in mind even in exams. Otherwise, remembering so many things is very difficult, practically impossible. Now, the most interesting part, which is the practical part for which we have to do some basic sums, is how to compute this amount which is eligible as deduction. Now, the amount which is eligible as deduction for this particular item, that is interest, comprises of two types of interest. What are these two interests? One is the current year's interest and the other is pre-construction interest, of which we will take 1/5 in a particular year. So it will be apportioned over 5 years, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5. Now I'm sure the question that may strike you is what is current year, what is pre-construction, that we will see as we proceed. So what is eligible for deduction is current year interest plus 1/5 of the pre-construction interest. Now comes the most important point. This is again unique, that when you read different heads, for certain deductions, there could be some monetary limit, that up to this amount only or up to this percentage only, the deduction is eligible. If your actual expenses are exceeding that amount, we will not allow you deduction. Now, in the similar fashion, there is a limit even for interest deduction. But students, please pay attention. This interest deduction may be of two types. One, where the property is self-occupied, or 2, where the property is any other. Now, any other may be let out property, or it may be deemed to be let out property. Again, please don't ask me now what is deemed to be let out, that we are going to understand. So either it is actually let out or it is assumed to be let out. Now, what is important is we are talking about the condition of, is there an upper cap as to the amount of deduction that you can claim on account of interest? Answer is, it depends upon what is the nature of the property. If the property is any other, that is, it is not self-occupied, it is either actually let out or it is assumed to be let out, please remember there is no limit of the amount of interest. Whatever interest you are actually accruing in a year, the entire interest is eligible for deduction. So please keep this in mind, because many times when we study the limit part, students keep that limit part in mind and they apply the limit everywhere. But the limit is not applicable when the property is in the let out category or in the deemed to be let out category. Now, we all know what is self-occupied. Self-occupied means where the property is held by you for your own use and it is not given to others on rent. Now here, again, there are two limits. One is a higher limit of rupees 2 lakhs, or there is a lower limit of rupees 30,000. Now these are annual limits. And these are limits qua assessee and not qua property. I'm sure many of you all may not have understood this, no worries. Still, I am purposefully using technical words so that you also get groomed to listen to such words and also start understanding it. And then the further stages, you also start using it. What is all this? I'll explain. First, there are two limits. What are these two limits? The first is a higher limit of rupees 2 lakhs. Now, this higher limit is applicable only where you have satisfied all the conditions. If all the conditions are satisfied, then only the higher limit of 2 lakhs is applicable. What are these all conditions? First, loan should have been taken either for construction or for purchase. It means if the loan is taken for repairs, renewal, renovation, then maximum limit will be only 30,000, not 2 lakhs. So for 2 lakhs, the first condition is loan should have been taken either for purchase or for construction. In other words, simply, if I have to say, loan is for new house property. Simple. If the loan is for new house property, you get higher limit of 2 lakhs. Second condition for 2 lakhs is the loan is taken on or after this date, which is 1st April 99. Why? Because prior to this date, there was no such deduction, no such condition. Hence, this condition was firstly brought in this year. So obviously it applies to all the loans which are taken after this year. So if by chance in the sum, it is given that loan is taken 1st April 1996. Now this date is before 99, your limit would be 30,000. Now let me inform you students, practically this should not come in your question, because saying that the loan is taken in 1996 will be a matter which will be around 29 to 30 years back. So practically such old loan cases cannot be given, because you are given cases of computation of current year. Current year means previous year 24-25. By this year, any loan taken before 1999 would be as good as 30 years old. So practically that will not be the case. So practically this condition will not be useful. But again, in any case study type of MCQ type of question, this may be of relevance. Third important condition for being eligible for the higher limit of 2 lakhs is, now you have taken loan for construction. Fine. You need to take it for construction or for purchase for being eligible for 2 lakhs. Now you have taken for construction. It means you are going to construct the property by yourself. In this case, the condition is that the construction should be done within 5 years. So if you have taken loan for construction, your construction should have got completed within 5 years. from the end of the year in which loan is taken. So from the year in which loan is taken, from the end of that year, you should complete the construction within 5 years. If you are not able to complete the construction within 5 years, again, your case will fall in the limit of 30,000. And the last condition is there should be a certificate that you have taken this loan from the person who is extending the loan. So I will write over here bank or financial institution. Now this practically every bank gives. They give you for every year the loan repayment certificate, which shows the breakup of principal interest. So that is what is sufficient for this condition. Now again in the exam, it may happen that except the first condition of purchase and construction, nothing is mentioned for the other three conditions. Again, we assume that the other conditions are satisfied. It means you are eligible for higher limit. I hope this is clear to all. Now, if the limits are clear, if it is also clear that the limits will apply only when the property is self-occupied, now comes the main point. What is this main point? This 2 lakhs limit is not per property. It is for 2 properties combined. So if you have 1 property, still the limit is 2 lakhs. If you have 2 properties, still the combined limit for both the properties combined is also 2 lakhs. Same as with this 30,000. So what is the law saying? Up to 2 self-occupied properties, the limit of 2 lakhs or 30,000 applies. This is what I have said here, that this limit is not qua property. That is, it is not to be seen per property. It is seen per assessee. So the limit applies assessee wise. That is, once you are doing a computation, let us say you are the assessee of whose computation is done, you are eligible for this limit. Whether it is 1 property, still you are eligible for the entire 2 lakhs. Whether it is 2 properties, still you are eligible for the entire 2 lakhs. It means the limit is per assessee. It is qua the assessee and not qua the property. Because had it been qua the property, and if you are having 2 properties, then you should have limit of 2 lakhs twice if it had been qua the property. But since it is not qua the property, it is qua the assessee. So for you, the limit is 2 lakhs. Yes, obviously, when the limit will be 2 lakhs, when you satisfy all these 4 conditions. If you have satisfied these all 4 conditions, then for you, the limit is 2 lakhs. Whether you use it in 1 house or in 2 houses, that is your choice. If you are having more than 2 houses, you can use this limit only for any 2 houses of your choice. That is what it means, that up to 2 houses. So let us say you have 3 houses. You have taken loan for all the 3 houses. The combined interest of all the 3 may exceed 2 lakhs, but I will give you deduction up to 2 lakhs, and that also for any 2 houses of your choice that you may select. How to do that? That is what we are going to see when we are going to go to practical sums after 15-20 minutes. Anybody has any questions in this particular point except the yellow highlighted point? I have not yet explained the yellow highlighted point. Excepting that, any question in this point of interest? Hardik, but I am not getting your question. What do you mean by explain outstanding rent implication? There is no implication for outstanding rent. We are computing HP income by considering the rent which you have earned, may or may not be received. So outstanding rent has no implication. I did not get why you are asking this point on outstanding rent. There is no implication for outstanding rent, Hardik. So if you have given the property on rent, let us say for entire year, whether or not you have received the rent for entire 12 months, let us say the tenant has given you rent only of 10 months, not 12 months. In that particular case, you are still required to consider the rent of entire 12 months. That is, even the outstanding is to be considered. This is the point. There is no special thing for outstanding. Now, Praveen is asking, sir, if in case I already constructed 2 floors, now I am taking loan against the property to build the 3rd floor. In this case, what will be the maximum limit of deduction? See, the maximum limit of deduction remains rupees 2 lakhs. The point is, for how many floors you can utilize it? For this, we have to understand when they say 1 HP, whether 1 HP will include all the 3 floors or it will include 1 floor. The answer to this is where the properties are so constructed, like you have a building which is for self-use, like we have private bungalows, or we have those private properties which are a duplex. That is where entry is common, everything is common, but you have constructed 2 or 3 floors, it is constructed as 1 HP. But where you have different entry exits, they are identifiably different floors where it has everything independent, then each floor or each particular flat may be considered as one separate house property. Praveen, I hope I could answer you. Gurminder is asking, sir, what do you mean by up to 2 HP? But I explained that you will get deduction up to 2 lakhs, and this can be taken by you for any 2 HP interest. If you are having more than 2 HPs which have taken loan, you will be eligible to take deduction of this interest for any 2 HP interest up to rupees 2 lakhs. What it means, beta? Be patient. When we solve some, you'll get to know this. Which certificate we require in 4th point, beta? You get a certificate from the bank, which is a proof that you have actually taken a loan. So it is indirectly a proof that loan is taken. So bank every year gives you a loan repayment certificate. So that is what is the requirement, Shruti. Tambeshwari pre-construction, we are coming to that, beta. Bhavna is asking, sir, qua means, beta, I explained that. Qua means per. So it is in respect of one property or it is in respect of one assessee. So whether it is per assessee or per property. Sir, can you explain condition 1, the acquisition part? Is it taking loan against my HP to buy another HP? Please understand, beta, acquisition means purchase. So the HP for which you are computing income, that HP's loan is only eligible for deduction over here, the interest of such loan. If you are getting rent from HPA, but you are paying interest for HPB, the interest paid for HPB will not be allowed as deduction against the rent of HPA because you do computation of each HP separately. So here, this deduction of interest or even municipal tax will be allowed against the same HP of which you are taking GAV. So if GAV is for HPA, then the municipal tax, the interest of HPA only is eligible and not any other HP. With the interest on loan, how many times can we utilize this deduction? Like, I used this deduction past 5 years ago. Can I use this deduction again for constructing new property? Yes, there is no limit that way, beta. Praveen, I did not get your question, beta. Sir, deduction, Bhavna is saying deduction 30,000 for each house or total deduction. Bhavna, beta, just be patient. How do you apply this for 2 house, 1 house? That you will understand only when we take a practical sum. So please be patient with that point, because whatever I'll explain theoretically will not be understood by you all. Be patient. You'll understand this, how to apply this rule of up to 2 house. So please be patient. Aniruddha beta, I don't know whether you are paying attention or not. I've already explained what does any other category means. Any other category means where you have given your property on rent. The limit of interest applies only when the property is self-occupied. So where you are staying in that property, where the property is in your possession for your own use, it is called as self-occupied. So any other category will mean what, beta? Any other category will mean where you have given it on rent. Now what is this yellow patch? This yellow patch, I'm sure prior to this in your earlier chapters, you would have come across this particular point that as on date, there are 2 mechanisms of computing tax. One is called as the new regime. The new regime has now been also named as the default regime. So the new regime of computing tax, and you have the old regime, which is also called as the normal provisions of computing tax. Now, when we will be solving sums of any head, whether or not tax computation is asked. See, one is you will be asked everything: compute income, set off losses, adjust deduction, and find out final tax. That will be one type of question. Or simply the question would be only compute income of that particular head. Like for example, right now we are computing only income from the head HP. They are not asking tax, but still you have to check which tax regime you are following of computing tax, whether you are following the old regime or the new regime. The new regime is also today, as I said, called as the default regime. Now, this regime is given under section 115 BAC bracket 1 capital A of the Income Tax Act. So the tax regime or the method of computing tax given under this section of the Income Tax Act is called as the new regime or the default regime. And opposite to this is the old regime, or which is also called as the normal regime or normal provisions of computing tax, which was the old regime. Now, depending upon which method of tax computation you are following, certain deductions may or may not be allowed. Like as you can see over here, we just saw that for self-occupied property. Now, please understand what is the relevance of self-occupied property. You are not getting any rent on that because you are using it for your own residence, like your own house in which you are staying today. This self-occupied property is not getting you any rent. Still, we are allowing you deduction. And that is why there is a limit up to some amount, either 2 lakhs or 30,000. Why this limit is required? Please understand this logic also. Why this limit is required? Because in case of self-occupied property, your rent received is zero. So there is no rent income because it is self-occupied. Hence, they have kept a limit on the interest. Whereas if the property is let out, where you are receiving rent, then at the same time, you can deduct any amount against interest. That is the logic between why there is a limit for self-occupied and no limit for other categories. Now, in case you are following the old regime or the normal method of computing tax, this deduction up to 30,000 or 2 lakhs is allowed. That is, you will get this deduction, what we just studied with all these conditions. However, if you are in the new regime, which is also called as the default regime, no need to read any of these points because there is no deduction, no 30,000, no 2 lakhs, no conditions, because this deduction is not allowed under the new regime or the new method of computing income and tax. But please remember, where your property is let out or deemed to be let out, in both the regimes, this deduction is allowed. So both regimes, the deduction is allowed, whether it is old regime or new regime. But the deduction of interest in case of self-occupied property is allowed only when the regime is old regime. For new regime, interest for self-occupied property is not allowed. No limit to be studied, no condition to be checked, because the deduction is not at all allowed under the new regime, only for self-occupied, where there is a limit. For other categories where there is no limit, the deduction of interest is allowed without any limit under both the regimes, that is the new regime as well as the old regime. I hope this is clear to everyone. Hardik beta, you're asking me for co-owners. Please be patient. See, I can explain everything right now, but I am trying to go step by step because I want that everybody should be able to digest it. But still, for the purpose you have raised this question, I'm answering your question. Answer of your question is, in case there are co-owners, the limit of 2 lakhs is qua the assessee. Means every assessee will get the limit of 2 lakhs. That is what is the relevance of the term qua assessee. Qua assessee means per assessee. So every assessee will get that particular limit of 2 lakhs because it is not on the basis of property, it is on the basis of assessee. Fine. I hope, Hardik, I've answered your question. Bhavna, you asked a question that in any other category, no limit means no deduction. But no limit means the deduction is allowed without any capping of 2 lakhs or 30,000. So even if your interest is 5 lakhs, we'll allow you deduction of 5 lakhs. No limit does not means no deduction. No limit means entire amount, whatever it is, will be allowed as deduction. That is the meaning of no limit. So this is the entire point. Everything relating to interest, deduction, theory. Now we go to the next part where we will try to understand the practical aspect of interest deduction. Now, this interest deduction has some practical aspects. Now, if you remember, in our previous slide, we saw the deduction is made up of two components, current year and pre-construction. And whatever is the pre-construction, you will take 1/5 of it every year. So it will be apportioned over 5 years, like how we have been doing in accounts. We take 1/5 or 1/8 or 1/10 of preliminary expenses or such expenses, and that amount is taken every year up till the amount gets exhausted. Same logic applies over here. If the interest is a pre-construction interest, you will take 1/5 of that amount up to 5 years. So every 1 year, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5. So in 5 years, the entire amount is exhausted. Now the question is, what is this pre-construction interest? How is it calculated? So there are some theoretical pointers relating to it. But I believe instead of reading this theory, let me explain this by way of practical first, and then we will come back to check this theory so that you will be able to relate with this theory. So I have taken two case studies. So let me take you to these case studies for understanding the concept and the working of pre-construction interest. Now, this is how actually you get the questions in exams. So these are replica of exam questions. So in exam, you may also get a 2 or 3 mark question only on computation of interest. Point number 1. Second, in the MCQ type of question, that is where a case study is given, one of the questions of the case study could be that the amount of pre-construction interest is, or the amount of interest eligible for deduction is. And that is where again, same type of data is given. So let us understand the concept of pre-construction and the entire computation of interest with the help of these two case studies. So first, Mr. Anand took a housing loan because he was doing construction of his property and he started construction of the property. Now the loan that he took was of rupees 48 lakhs. The rate of interest is 10% per annum. This loan is taken on 1st August 2020, on which date he also started the construction of his residential house. Now students, please pay attention. There are some assumptions here when we are solving the sum on interest. First, repayment is not in installments. Now practically this is not the case. Practically you pay every month small amount of principal along with the entire interest. This is how you pay every month's installment. However, here the assumption is that we are not paying in installment. It means this entire 48 lakhs will be paid on the closure of the loan. That is, in this sum it is given as the loan is repayable on this date. So first assumption that we have to make, or that is done by the question, is that your repayment is not monthly. It is one time at the end of the loan period. Second assumption, there is no compounding of interest. Again, practically this is not correct. In real life, we all know banks do compounding. However, here both things are not there. Now somebody may have a question, sir, if in real life both these things happen, why we are not doing it here? Because please understand and appreciate, students, if I include both these in my question, you may require 1 hour minimum to only find out every month's interest payable, because for every month's interest payable, one, you have to do the compounding, one, you have to also do the installment reduction and computation of balance principal. So it would be a very tedious job, and that is not what is the intention of the examiner, they do not want to test your interest calculation skill. They want to test the knowledge of law, that as per section 24 clause B, are you able to find out the deduction of interest, not the computation of interest? In real life, even though this is done, but let me inform you students, you never do this in real life. This is done by the bankers, because every year they give you that loan repayment certificate in which they have given the breakup of principal and interest. So practically also in life, you don't have to do this. All this is done by the bank software, or even nowadays you can have those apps which are easily downloadable. You can put all the details, the loan amount, the interest percentage, the compounding, and the period of loan, and the software does all the calculation, which is now available in the form of mobile apps. So practically also these things, you don't do it. Here, we do not want to invest, or I will use the word waste your time during exams in making these interest technical calculations, because that is what is not required in professional life also. So with these two assumptions, let us proceed. Now, what is important is the data given further. Construction is completed on. Here I have taken 4 possibilities just to give you the flavor of this particular point. We will solve each possibility one by one. So first possibility is construction of this particular property, which was started in the year 2020 on 1st August, is completed on 1st October 2023. Now, what am I supposed to do is, I'm supposed to do computation of interest under section 24 clause B. Fine, students. Now in this, the columns that we make is previous year, current year interest, 1/5 of pre-construction interest, and the total. And here I will need a working note where we will find out pre-construction interest amount, of which we have to take 1/5 over 5 years. Now this is the working that you will have to do every time whenever the sum requires you to compute interest, and whenever there is pre-construction. What is pre-construction? You will understand very soon in next 1 or 2 minutes. Now, in this particular question, the first most important point is we need to find out from which year I will be eligible to take deduction. I repeat, we have to find out from which year I will be eligible to take deduction. The answer is simple. The deduction would start from the year in which your property comes into existence. So in this particular scenario A, my property has come into existence in October 23. So the previous year for me is 23-24. That is the year in which the property has come into existence. So for me, 23-24 is the year from which I am eligible to take this deduction, and it is from this year that I will start doing my working and my calculation. Now pay attention. Now 23-24 is the starting year. The question is, what is the end year? That is, up to when are you eligible to take this deduction? Now please pay attention here. There will be 2 answers. I am giving you the answer of up till when. The answer is, first is, you have to anyways take minimum 5 years. Why minimum 5 years? Because your pre-construction, which is allowed in 5 installments, 1/5, will anyway continue for 5 years. So 5 years is minimum. Still, it may further extend depending on what? Depending on the repayment of loan, because till date the loan continues, the interest will continue. So it is so as you can see, in this year, or rather in this case, case A, my interest would continue up to the financial year 3031, which is the last year of my loan. Anybody has any questions with the previous year list, that is from when to when I am eligible for this deduction? What is the start point? What is the end point? Anybody has any questions on this? Yes, students, everybody getting this particular point, the start year, the end year of this entire working? Five-year more, why? But I didn't get your question, Tambeshwari. See, 5 years, anyways, this pre-construction, which is allowed 1/5, will be there for 5 years. So anyways, you get deduction for 5 years. But here, I'm going up to 3031. How did I decide to go up to 3031 only? On the basis of the loan repayable year. Please understand, beta, we are doing computation of interest. Till when will there be interest? The interest will be there till the date there is loan. So if my loan is up to 3031, my interest will be up to 3031. Correct? Understood, Tambeshwari? Hardik, I assume you are saying clear because you have said no, sir, clear. So I'm assuming you are saying positively clear. Okay. Now, current year interest means the interest of that particular year. So if you're talking about 23-24, the interest of the year 23-24. If you are saying 24-25, interest of the year 24-25, and so on. In short, 1 year's interest. That is what is your current year interest. That is the interest applicable for each of these years. Now, how much will be my 1 year interest? If my loan is 48 lakhs and it will remain 48 lakhs throughout, as I said, we are not going to do any repayment as per the assumptions that are made in the sum. So 4,80,000 is for is the loan amount. The 10% is my interest for the year, which comes to 4,80,000. I'm writing figures, which is amount rupees in thousands. So my 1 year interest is 4,80,000, which is 10% of 48 lakhs. Right, students? Now, there is a problem in this. The problem is in the last year. Last year, it cannot be 480. Why? Because last year, my loan will be only up to 1st August 2030. So how many months in the last year the loan is there? April, May, June, and July. 4 months. Because 1st August, I'm repaying it. So I'm having interest only of 4 months in the last year. So in the last year, it will not be 480. It will be 4 months interest, which is 160. I hope this is clear to all. Neha, beta, how do you get to know that your loan is up to 3031? Please see the loan repayable period given in the sum. What does the sum say? Loan is repayable on which date? 1st August 2030. So if my loan is repayable on 1st August 2030, this I think is sufficient for me to understand or give me that particular hint what you're asking for. That how will I get to know that my loan is up to 3031? Neha, I hope this is clear to you. Yes, this is a good point, Vaidehi. Allow me some time to answer you. Now, this is how my current year interest is computed. I hope it is clear to everyone. Now then, we need to go to the most interesting point, that is pre-construction. Now, firstly, I personally believe they should not have used the word pre-construction, because if I go by the literal meaning of pre-construction, I'm getting the wrong understanding. So actually here, it is the interest which is paid for the period before your property has come into existence, which is right now not covered in the current year. So in very simple words, if I have to put it in my language, what is this pre-construction interest? It is the interest not covered in current year. If you have understood this, whatever technical calculations we are going to deal with will be understandable. If I have to give you another parallel word for this, it is like the preliminary expenses, which are the expenses incurred before the commencement of business. So here, before this house property has come into existence, the period before that is your pre-construction period. Now, to find out pre-construction interest, I need to first find out my pre-construction period. Now, pre-construction period will be computed as the starting date is date of loan, no doubt, because interest will start from this date only. So it is 1st August 2020. There is no doubt in this. The interesting part is the end date. Now, one logical end date of this would be repayment of loan date. What is my loan repayment date in this particular case? It is 1st August 2030. So obviously, interest would be for the loan period. Loan period is from 1st August 20, which is the starting date. And the first possible date for completion of this period, which we are calculating the pre-construction period, it is 1st August 2030. But I have another date. And let me inform you students, in majority of the case, this date is the answer for the end date of the pre-construction period. Now, before I write or mention anything about this date, please remember the logic which I have given. What is your pre-construction interest? It is the interest which is not covered in the current year. Now, you have already written down the current year interest. So, interest here onwards is entirely current year. But there is some interest which is not covered in this period because it is of the earlier period. It is of the prior period. That interest is the pre-construction interest. Now, what is this second date of this pre-construction interest period? The second date is 31st March. Immediately preceding the completion of construction. Now, this is interesting. Again, I will say that even if you're not able to understand this, if you find this very technical, no problem. Just look at this. This is the golden rule of what is pre-construction interest. It is the interest for the period which is not covered in the current year list. That is a period before that. Now, the starting date of that period is 1st August 2020. But what is the end date? End date is 1, the date of repayment of loan, or 2, this date, whichever is earlier. And as I said, majority cases, this date is earlier. What is this date? 31st March, immediately preceding the completion of construction. Now, when did my construction get completed? My construction was completed on 1st October 2023. What is the 31st March immediately preceding that? It is 31st March 2023. So, my pre-construction period is 1st August to 31st March 23. 1st August 20 to 31st March 23. How much this period comes to? It is 2 years and, if I'm not wrong, 8 months. Please check. It is 2 years, 8 months. Or yes, Sainath is saying 32 months. Same. Now, my pre-construction interest is simply the interest of this period, 2 years, 8 months. The interest of this period 2 years, 8 months is my pre-construction interest. $480 is $960. 960 plus 320 is 1280. So it is rupees 12 lakhs 80,000. Amount rupees in thousands. Or let me write the full amount. Correct? Now, how much is 1/5 of this? Now I come to the question of Vaidehi. Vaidehi, I hope now you will get your answer, what you were trying to understand. Yes, beta. Praveen, you're right. Good, Vaidehi. That is why I did not answer you at that time, because at that time, see, certain things you can understand only with practicals. Now, my pre-construction is 1/5 is coming to 2,56,000. So 256, 256, 256 for 5 years. So for first 5 years, my interest amount, which is eligible for deduction. I'm not saying this is deduction, this is eligible. I may or may not, that depends upon whether it is self-occupied, let out, whether there is limit or no limit. All those things will decide the final amount. But at least my eligible amount is 736. So for first 5 years, the eligible amount is 736. Then after that, 480, 480, and in the last year, the eligible amount is 360. Now, since I am in this year, this is the year for which we are supposed to give our answers in exams. If the question asks you, what is the pre-construction interest eligible for previous year 24-25, you will take 256. What is the interest eligible for deduction? You will take 736. So be clear as to what the question is asking, because MCQ questions are very tricky. They ask you something which is, you have to be very minutely reading the question. Otherwise, despite of making right calculation, you may get the answer as wrong. This is the beauty of MCQs. Yes, Tambeshwari.
Sir, how to calculate 12,80,000, sir?
बेटा इधर मैंने कुछ लिखा है, आप देखिए. पहली बात, मेरा प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड 2 years 8 months आया.
Yes, sir. Sir, in the difference between 1 August 2020 to 31st March 2023.
Sorry?
Right?
Yes, it is this period ना. Yes. आपका प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड ये रहा ना, 1 August 20 यहाँ से शुरू हो रहा है, यहाँ से लेके 31st March 23.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Sir. Yes, sir. And next, sir, how calculate?
So बेटा अभी आप बताओ, 1 साल का आपका इंटरेस्ट कितना था? 4,80,000 था.
Yes, sir.
4,80,000 का डबल करो, 9,60,000 हो गया.
Yes, sir.
और अगर 1 लाख का 4,80,000 है तो 8 महीने का कितना हुआ? 4,80,000 is for 1 year, which is 12 months. So 8 months का कितना हो गया?
1 second, sir. 3,20,000 plus 9,60,000. Yes, sir.
आ गया बेटा?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes. I'm repeating this calculation again for the benefit of all. I'm repeating in Hindi on special request. So, हमें ये जो इंटरेस्ट कैलकुलेट करना है, ये इंटरेस्ट 2 चीजों से बना है as per the law. The law says the 2 things that will make up your interest amount is एक current year का इंटरेस्ट और एक प्रिलिमिनरी पीरियड का इंटरेस्ट, जिसे इन्होंने प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन कहा है. अब जैसा कि हम अकाउंट्स में भी करते हैं, प्रिलिमिनरी एक्सपेंसेस को हम पूरा नहीं लेते हैं, हम उसे अपॉर्शन करते हैं 5 years 10 years. वैसे इनकम टैक्स लॉ में उन्होंने 1/5 लिया है. सो इनकम टैक्स लॉ सेज कि हम 1/5 में अपॉर्शन करेंगे. सो दैट इज वाई जो भी आपका प्रिलिमिनरी पीरियड का इंटरेस्ट आएगा उसको आपको 1/5 करना है। नाउ द मेन क्वेश्चन इज व्हाट इज दिस प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन, यानी ये जो प्रिलिमिनरी है ये क्या है। उसका मैंने आपको सिंपल एक गोल्डन रूल बताया, आप ये गोल्डन रूल समझिए, आपको कोई कैलकुलेशन का कभी भी प्रॉब्लम नहीं आएगा। इट इज व्हाट, इंटरेस्ट नॉट कवर्ड इन द करेंट ईयर। तो पहले ये देखिए, ये मैंने करंट ईयर का इंटरेस्ट फाइंड आउट किया। व्हाट इज करंट ईयर, इस साल का इंटरेस्ट। अब सबसे पहले हमें ये डिसाइड करना है कौन से ईयर से आपको इंटरेस्ट का डिडक्शन मिलना शुरू होगा। आपको इंटरेस्ट का डिडक्शन मिलेगा जिस साल आपका कंस्ट्रक्शन कंप्लीट हुआ है, क्योंकि जिस साल आपका हाउस प्रॉपर्टी रेडी हुआ है, जैसे कि हम प्रिलिमिनरी के बारे में बात करते हैं, प्रिलिमिनरी पीरियड कहां तक चलता है, जहां से आपका बिजनेस स्टार्ट हो रहा है उसके पहले तक प्रिलिमिनरी है, और उसके बाद जो भी होता है वो आपके करंट ईयर पीएनएल में आता है। सेम लॉजिक, जब तक हाउस प्रॉपर्टी रेडी नहीं होता है उस ईयर के पहले तक का जो भी इंटरेस्ट है वो प्रिलिमिनरी यानी प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन है, और एक बार हाउस प्रॉपर्टी रेडी हो गया उस ईयर से आगे का जो भी इंटरेस्ट है वो करंट ईयर। अब अगर हाउस प्रॉपर्टी रेडी हुआ है अक्टूबर 2023 में, इसका मतलब कौन सा फाइनेंशियल ईयर आया, 23-24, यहां से मैं मेरे इंटरेस्ट का कैलकुलेशन शुरू कर सकता हूं, क्योंकि यहां से मेरे पास मेरा घर एग्जिस्टेंस में आ गया है। अब आपने हमेशा 5 साल तो लिख लेने हैं, क्योंकि 5 साल तक ये तो आना ही है। ये जो 1/5 आ रहा है ये 5 साल तक तो आएगा ही, सो यू शुड ऑलवेज राइट द फर्स्ट 5 years। मगर इसके बाद भी मेरा इंटरेस्ट मुझे पे करना पड़ सकता है, डिपेंडिंग अपॉन मेरा लोन रीपेमेंट ईयर कौन सा है। सो मुझे ये लास्ट कौन से ईयर तक इंटरेस्ट का कैलकुलेशन करना पड़ेगा, जब तक मेरा लोन चलता रहेगा। माई लोन इज रिपेएबल ऑन 1 August 2030। इट मीन्स मेरे लिए जो लास्ट फाइनेंशियल ईयर आएगा जब तक मुझे इंटरेस्ट भरते रहना पड़ेगा, जब तक मेरा लोन चलता रहेगा, दैट इज द फाइनेंशियल ईयर 3031। आई होप दिस इज क्लियर, यहां तक सबको समझ में आया। अब एक बार मैंने मेरा करंट ईयर का इंटरेस्ट निकाल लिया, तो करंट ईयर में तो मेरे को जो हर साल का इंटरेस्ट है वो तो डिडक्शन में ले सकता हूं, मगर मेरा कुछ इंटरेस्ट अभी भी छूट गया है जिसका डिडक्शन अभी भी मेरे करंट ईयर में कवर नहीं हुआ है। जो मेरे करंट ईयर के पहले वाला पीरियड है जिसका इंटरेस्ट अभी तक मैंने करंट ईयर कॉलम में नहीं लिया है, दैट इज माय प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट। तो ये जो प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट है इसका वर्किंग जब हम करेंगे तो इसके वर्किंग के लिए सबसे पहले आपका स्टार्टिंग डेट क्या होगा, जिस दिन आपका लोन है, जो मेरे एग्जांपल में है 1 August 2020। So the loan is taken on 1 August 2020. So 1 August 2020 is my starting date. अब ये यहां से कहां तक कैलकुलेट करना है प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट, तो इसके दो डेट्स में से whichever is earlier है। पहला है रीपेमेंट ऑफ लोन जो इस सम में है 1 August 2030, और दूसरा डेट है 31 March, कंस्ट्रक्शन खत्म होने वाली डेट के पहले जो 31 March आ रहा है वो। अब आपका कंस्ट्रक्शन खत्म कौन से दिन हो रहा है, कंस्ट्रक्शन इज गेटिंग ओवर ऑन 1 October 2023। सो 1 October 2023 को जो कंस्ट्रक्शन कंप्लीट हो रहा है वहां से आप कैलेंडर में उल्टा आइए, आपका 31 March मतलब क्या आने वाला है, वो 31 March 23, राइट। सो 31 March 23 आपका दूसरा डेट हो गया। अब आपको इन दोनों डेट्स में से कौन सा डेट लेना है, आपको इन दोनों डेट्स में से लेना है whichever is earlier, तो वो ऑब्वियसली आएगा 31 March 23। तो आपका प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट शुरू कब से होगा, 1 August 20 से लेके 31 March 23 तक। मगर ये जो भी हमने टेक्निकली किया, अगर मैं आपको इसे वापस बताऊं तो सिंपल वर्ड्स में, एकदम सिंपल वर्ड्स में, आपको ये जो आपका करंट ईयर का इंटरेस्ट था ना, ये जो इसके पहले जो भी आपने इंटरेस्ट भरा है दैट इज प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन, सिंपल। ये 1 सेंटेंस गोल्डन रूल है इस पूरे टेक्निकल कैलकुलेशन का, क्योंकि यहां से आगे का इंटरेस्ट आप ले रहे हो इन द करंट ईयर कॉलम, पर इसके पहले का जो मेरा इंटरेस्ट मैंने भरा है और जो छूट रहा है वो भी तो मिलना चाहिए, वो मिलेगा आपको प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट के कॉलम में। अब इसके पहले का जो इंटरेस्ट है जो मैं ये बता रहा हूं, इसके पहले वाला पीरियड, ये पीरियड कहां से कहां तक आएगा, तो प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड ये पीरियड खत्म यहां पे हो जाएगा। यहां पे मतलब कहां पे, हमने ये स्टार्ट किया 23-24 से, यानी प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड ये स्टार्ट हुआ है 1 April 23 से। क्योंकि 23-24 का अगर मैंने पूरा इंटरेस्ट लिया है, इसका मतलब ये 1 अप्रैल 23 से स्टार्ट हुआ है, सो ये खत्म होगा 31 मार्च 23 को, जिसको यहाँ पे टेक्निकली लिखा है 31 मार्च इमीडिएटली प्रिसीडिंग कंप्लीशन ऑफ कंस्ट्रक्शन। पर उसका लॉजिक क्या है, मुझे यहां तक का इंटरेस्ट चाहिए, यहां से ऊपर का इंटरेस्ट। तो मैं शुरू करूंगा कहां से, जिस दिन मैंने लोन लिया, और खत्म करूंगा कहां पे, यहां पे, क्योंकि उसके आगे का इंटरेस्ट मैं करंट ईयर में ले सकता हूं, ले रहा हूं। कौन सा मैं नहीं ले पा रहा हूं, दैट इज करंट ईयर के पहले वाला पीरियड। तो उसका स्टार्टिंग डेट आया 1 अगस्त 20, जो कि लोन का डेट है, क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट तभी से स्टार्ट होना है, और उसका एंड डेट 90% सम्स में यही आता है। दिस इज हाउ यू गेट द प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड। अब अगर मैं 1 अगस्त 2020 से लेके 31 मार्च 2023 तक काउंट करूं ऑन माय फिंगर्स कितने साल और कितने महीने हुए, तो इट कम्स टू 2 years and 8 months। एंड एक बार मुझे पीरियड मिल गया तो इंटरेस्ट आ जाएगा। कैसे, मेरा 1 साल का इंटरेस्ट कितना आ रहा है, 1 साल का इंटरेस्ट आ रहा है 4,80,000। दिस इज इंटरेस्ट ऑफ 1 year। अब 1 year है तो 2 years का इंटरेस्ट कितना आएगा, 4,80,000 इंटू 2 9,60,000, और 4,80,000 1 साल का है तो डिवाइडेड बाय 12 इंटू 8, तो मुझे 8 महीने का इंटरेस्ट मिलेगा। सो दिस इज हाउ आई विल फाइंड आउट माई इंटरेस्ट फॉर टोटल 2 years and 8 months। और ये जो 2 years and 8 months का इंटरेस्ट आएगा, दिस इज माई प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट। आई होप दिस इज क्लियर। फिर ये जो प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट है 1280, इसको 1/5 करके मैं 5 साल में अपॉर्शन करूंगा, ये आ जाएगा प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट वाले कॉलम। और फिर आई विल गेट टोटल इंटरेस्ट ऑफ एवरी ईयर। इज दिस क्लियर टू ऑल स्टूडेंट्स? सबको ये समझ में आ रहा है? यस, पक्का? नाउ नो डाउट्स विद एनीवन? भावना बेटा, अप्रैल टू जुलाई का इंटरेस्ट आपने शायद ध्यान नहीं दिया, वो इसमें कवर हो गया ना करंट ईयर में, क्योंकि करंट ईयर का इंटरेस्ट मैंने 1 अप्रैल से ले लिया, तो यहाँ पे पूरा 1 अप्रैल से लेके पूरा इंटरेस्ट आ गया। तो आपने जो पूछा अप्रैल से जुलाई का इंटरेस्ट कहाँ गया, वो इसमें आया कि नहीं भावना? राइट, अंडरस्टूड स्टूडेंट्स? चलो, मैं अपने लिए 5-7 मिनट्स का ब्रेक ले रहा हूं, आपके लिए कोई ब्रेक नहीं है। आपको आगे के केसेस बी सी डी का यहाँ पे वर्किंग करना है, सेम इसी फॉर्मेट में। यू हैव टू डू वर्किंग ऑफ बी सी डी। इसका आप स्क्रीनशॉट निकाल लीजिए और बी सी डी का वर्किंग इसी तरीके से करिए। टिल देन आई टेक अ ब्रेक फॉर माई सेल्फ। नो ब्रेक फॉर यू, यू आर स्टूडेंट्स। चलो, स्टार्ट डूइंग द वर्किंग स्टूडेंट्स। Sir, in this question, we didn't get any benefit for all calculation because the cap is 2 lakhs. You are wrong, beta. Shruti, आपने कहा the cap is 2 lakhs. How can the cap be 2 lakhs, Shruti? Why will I not get the benefit of all the calculations? 2 लाख का कैप है, ऐसा आप कैसे कह रही हैं श्रुति जी? डेडिकेशन, डेडिकेशन क्या हुआ बेटा? व्हाट इज डेडिकेशन? बेटा 2 lakhs का लिमिट कब आना था? वेयर द प्रॉपर्टी इज सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड। यहाँ पे आपको कुछ बताया है कि ये प्रॉपर्टी आपने रेंट पे दिया है या अपने पास रखा है? नहीं। अगर ये प्रॉपर्टी रेंट पे दिया आपने तो लेट आउट हो जाएगा, फिर ये पूरा 736 और 480 सब मिलेगा। या ये प्रॉपर्टी रेंट पे नहीं भी दिया मगर लॉ उसे डीम टू बी लेट आउट मानता है, जो क्या है अभी हम आगे सीखेंगे आफ्टर द ब्रेक। तो डीम टू बी लेट आउट रहेगा तो भी आपको ये पूरा 7,36,000 4,80,000 मिलेगा। आपको 2 lakhs का लिमिट तभी आएगा अगर ये प्रॉपर्टी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड है तो। सिंपल, ठीक है ना? सो द कैलकुलेशन इज नॉट वेस्ट। चलो आगे क्या करो, I'm taking a small break. Okay. Let's see what the answers are. Now, what am I changing in every scenario? I'm changing the date of construction completion. The date of construction completion here is 26 January. Now, which is this financial year? 26 January. It is the financial year 25-26. Now, see the difference. Now, in this particular case, my deduction will start from which year? It will start from 25-26, which is the year of completion of my construction. Now, current year interest will start from 25-26 and it has to go minimum for 5 years. So it will be ending on 30-31, which is also the last year for the repayment of loan. I hope this is clear. Now, coming to pre-construction calculation, the starting date of loan will be same. End date of loan, as per our rule, will be 31st March, immediately preceding the completion of construction. So it will become 31st March 2025. So now my total period of pre-construction is 4 years and 8 months. And this amount, which was 1280, will become is this right? The 1/5 of this will be how much? It will be 448. 448. 448. This is 3, 4, 4, 8, and fine. So the total interest eligible in first 5 years will be total of 480, 448. It comes to 928. And in the last year, there is only the current year interest of 160. So it will be 160. Right? Riddhi beta 8 months calculation. What do you want? Interest calculation of 8 months? My 4,80,000 is 480 is per annum interest. Right? Praveen, how can it be 9 months, beta? It is 8 months. Huh? Please check whether it is 8 months or 9 months. So 480 is per year upon 12 months into 8 months. This will give me the interest for 8 months. And if somebody is asking me, how do I get this period of 4 years and 8 months? If this is your doubt, then please count it on your fingers. 1st August 2020 to 21, 22, 23, 24. So where have I reached? I have reached 1st August 2024. This is 4 complete years. Now 1st August 24 is my 4 complete years. Then up to 31st March 25. So August, entire August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. How many months? 8 months. I hope I answered everyone who has doubts about this. Let me go to the next scenario where your construction completion date is 1st December 2030. Now this is going to be interesting. 1st December 2030. So if 2031st December is my construction completion date, then in this particular case, my starting year will be what? My starting year would be 2030. That is the year of completion of construction. I have to go minimum 5 years. Current year will anyways be ended soon because my loan is repayable on 1st August 2020 itself. So loan will be repaid. Now in 3031, how much is my current year interest? My current year interest is only for 4 months. That is up to 1st August 2030. So current year interest is only of 4 months, which is coming to 160. Then henceforth, I have no current year interest. Now, my pre-construction period will start on 1st August 20 and will end on 31st March 2030. So now how many years? It is now 9 years and 8 months. How much is my total pre-construction interest for 9 years, 8 months? Yes, pre-construction interest for 9 years, 8 months is how much? I'll do the calculation. $928 by the, let me just check. I'm getting 4640. So for me, 46 lakhs 40,000 is this total pre-construction interest divided by 5. I'm getting 928. So 928 for 5 years. So in the 4 years, it is 928 only because there is no current year interest. And in the first year, it is 928 plus 160. That is my calculation. Correct? Now going to the D case. My construction is completed on 1st October 2032. Now if my construction is completed on 1st October 32, so my working starts from this date. 32, 33, and it has to go for minimum 5 years. So it will be 36, 37. Now important. There is no current year interest. Why? Because the loan has already been repaid in the year 2030 and I am starting from 32, 33. So there is no current year interest. Now, this date will be 31st March 2032 and now this becomes the earlier date. So now my pre-construction period for the first time will be this, which is complete 10 years. And for 10 years, my interest would be 48 lakhs. And this 48 lakhs divided by 5 will give me 9,60,000. So in this case, I'll have interest deduction in 5 years. And in each of these 5 years, the total interest eligible for deduction is 960. Right, students? So this is all about the interest computation. Once you have understood this, now we can proceed to the main part, that is computing income from HP under different scenarios, which is now much easier to understand. Now this is interesting, how income from HP is computed under different scenarios. So I'll first draw for you the different scenarios. Then we already have the printed also. So what are the different scenarios? My house property is either self-occupied or let out. In self-occupied, whether it is self-occupied for own business or it is self-occupied for residence. If it is own business, then we do not consider it over here. It is covered under PGBP. If it is self-occupied for residence, then again there are two possibilities. Whether it is up to 2 HPs or it is more than 2 HPs. So if it is self-occupied for residence, then up to 2 HPs or more than 2 HPs. Correct? Let out. Let out may be for business or for residence. It makes no difference to me as far as letting out is not my business. So if letting out is not my business, whether I'm giving the let out property as a commercial property or residential property, the opposite person is staying there doing business, it is none of my concern. Now in this, what are the possibilities? 1, 2 or more HPs are let out. So when it is let out, whether 1 HP is let out, 2 are let out or more are let out, the working is same. The other possibility is HP is let out for part year and self-occupied for remaining part year. So HP is let out for part year means you are staying in that HP for first 9 months. Then you shift to a bigger property and for the balance 3 months, you have let out that property. So out of 12, 9 months you are staying. So first 9 months, let us say your current house, you are staying here. Up to December, you are staying here. Then you shift to a bigger house. And this house, you give it on rent to someone for the balance 3 months period. So it will become what? Which is let out for part year, self-occupied for part year. I hope this scenario is clear. And the last scenario is part HP is self-occupied and part is let out. Now, what is the practical example of this? The practical example of this is paying guest. Like in many big cities like Pune, Mumbai, or other bigger cities like Bangalore and all these places where there are many outsiders coming and staying, this is a very common scenario. In that particular case, you are staying in that flat, occupying few rooms, and few rooms in the same flat, you are giving it on rent. Yes, Airbnb also. Now, here the law says, let us find out the proportion. So let us say 2/3 of the house you are using for yourself and 1/3, which is 1 bedroom or kitchen or something, you have given to rent to outsiders. Now, in this particular case, the working is done in 2 parts. First part is as if the property is self-occupied, that is as per this. So first part, which is the 2/3 part in my example, the working will be done like this. The working is done like this. And for the remaining 1/3, which is let out, the working is done like this. So when the same property is partly self-occupied and partly let out, you do the working as per the applicable scenario, assuming there are 2 different HPs. Now, this is the only important point. Here you assume there are 2 different HPs. The self-occupied portion and the let out portion are considered separately. So these are the different scenarios in which HP income could be computed. Now, when your HP is self-occupied, used for own residence, and it is either 1 or 2, that is up to 2 HPs, then you are covered in section 23, bracket 2, clause A or B. This is what is important. Now, what is the importance of this? That I'll explain in the next slide, which we are going to discuss. Have you understood all these scenarios? Those who want may take a screenshot, because I'm going to remove this, because now we are going to deal with the practical aspect of all these things. And it is very simple and interesting. Hope everybody has understood this. So now I'm deleting this. Now, we cover the same thing in the form of this working table, where we have the format of computing HP income. See, the format is you first find out gross annual value. This is the GAV. From that, you deduct the municipal tax paid. You get the NAV. And from that, you have standard deduction, interest on borrowed capital, and the balance is your final income or loss from HP. Now, the scenarios are up to 2 self-occupied HPs. Now, what is important? This section 23, subsection 2, clause A, clause B. This section says where you have up to 2 self-occupied HPs, the GAV of these HPs will be considered as 0. Municipal tax you may have paid, rather you would be paying, because we have to pay it compulsorily. Still, it will be considered 0, means you will ignore the municipal tax. And if both are 0, by default, your NAV has to be nil. NAV nil, so by default, standard deduction nil. It means everything in case of 2 self-occupied HPs would be considered as nil. The only thing that is there is interest on loan or borrowed capital, where there are 2 possible scenarios. Are you in the old regime? That is the normal provisions. If you are in the old regime, that is normal provisions, you get deduction up to 2 lakhs or up to 30,000 as the case may be. However, if you are in the new or the default regime, this deduction is not allowed. It means everything will be nil for you. So if you are in the new regime, that is the default regime, everything will be nil. Your final answer for 2 self-occupied HPs is nil. If you are in the old regime, then here you get this deduction up to 2 lakhs, up to 30,000 as the case may be. And whatever is the deduction, that becomes your HP loss. So whatever is the deduction, that becomes your HP. This is only in case of old scheme, not the new scheme or the default scheme, right? Now here, this is the only thing where some understanding or technical calculation is required. So let me take a simple example. I'll give you simple data. Mr. Bhole has 3 HPs. Details are as follows. Now it is HP 1, 2, 3. Firstly, all are self-occupied. Now the details are expected rent 30 lakhs, 45 lakhs, 50 lakhs. Municipal tax paid 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, 5 lakhs. Interest on loan 3.5 lakhs, 1.2 lakhs, and 2 lakhs. Or let me change this figure. Let us say it is only 80,000. Compute HP income under both tax regime. Assuming HP1 and HP3, this one, have satisfied all the 4 conditions. What were these 4 conditions? The 4 conditions so that your limit becomes 2 lakhs. It means this HP2 has not satisfied all the 4 conditions. Just keep this in mind. Now, first, I will do it by the old regime, because then going to the new regime is simple. There is no much difference. Means, in fact, new regime is much easier to solve. Now, pay attention. Old regime. Computing HP loss. Now, before I start doing this, please understand what does this particular point means. Now, we saw in our previous slide, and even when I was drawing it, the law says up to 2 self-occupied or HP. If it is self-occupied, then the benefit is we will take GAV as nil. It means there will be no income computation for first 2 self-occupied HPs. Now, if you have more than 2 self-occupied HPs, what is the impact? The impact is here. The property beyond 2 will be considered as deemed to be let out. So more than 2 self-occupied HPs are there. First 2 self-occupied HPs will be treated like this. That is, GAV will be nil. Everything would be nil, as you can see. And interest deduction would be same. Up to limit if you are in old regime, or if you are in new regime, 0. But the property which is beyond 2, that is the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th and the 6th property, that is the number of properties beyond 2, they will be treated as if they are let out. Means the benefit of self-occupancy is allowed only up to 2 self-occupied HPs. Beyond 2, whatever number of HPs you have, they are considered as deemed to be let out. Now, if they are considered as deemed to be let out, then what is the working? Now, we are not considering them as self-occupied, we are considering them as let out. So you have to find out GAV. Now, in this case, there is no AR because actually the property is not let out. So there is no actual rent, but you have expected rent. So your GAV is the ER figure. Because every property has expected rent, because municipal value, fair value, everything is there for every property, whether let out or self-occupied. So your GAV is the expected rent. From this, you deduct municipal tax, which is actually paid, as the condition is. You get NAV, you take 30% deduction of NAV. Most important, since now the property is not self-occupied, in both regimes, whether the regime is old regime or the new regime, you will get deduction of, somebody had a confusion, full amount of interest. When I say no limit, it means what? You will get whatever interest you have paid, the full amount of interest is allowed as deduction, whether you follow the old regime or the new regime. So this rule applies to the property which is considered as deemed to be let out. Now, with this background, let me take you to this working. Okay. Let me do the working here. Computation of HP income if these are treated as deemed to be let out. See, you'll require computation only if they are treated as deemed to be let out. HP1, HP2, HP3. Now, if they are deemed to be let out, what is GAV? GAV is equal to the ER figure. So it is 30 lakhs. Again, I am writing amount rupees in thousands. So 30 lakhs, 45 lakhs, 50 lakhs. From this, I deduct municipal tax, which is paid, which is 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, 5 lakhs. I get NAV, which is 28 lakhs, 42 lakhs, 45 lakhs. From this, I deduct deductions under section 24, clause A, standard, and clause B, interest. So how much is this working coming? 28 lakhs into 30% is 840. 42 lakhs into 30% is 1260. And 45 lakhs into 30% is 1350. Now, since this is deemed to be let out, there is no limitation of interest. Whatever interest is there, entire amount will be allowed as deduction. 350, 120, and 80. So I get my final HP income, assuming these properties are deemed to be let out. So 28 lakhs minus 8,40,000 minus 3,50,000. 16 lakhs 10,000. Similarly, 42 lakhs minus 1260 minus 120. 28 lakhs 20,000. Similarly, 45 lakhs minus 1350 minus 80. 30 lakhs 70,000. Correct? Now, these are my computations if the property is considered as let out. Now comes my main computation, which I was going to show you here. That is under the old regime. Computation of HP income or loss. Now, please pay attention. You have different options. Option 1, option 2, option 3. What are these options? HP1, HP2, HP3. Now, what are these three options? These three options are which property is SO. So option 1 is these two are SO and this is DLO. Option 2 is these two are SO. This is DLO. Option 3 is these two are SO. So this is DLO. Is this clear? Now, whichever property is DLO, you will get the HP income as per the DLO calculation. So if HP3 is DLO, So 3070 would be considered here. If HP2 is DLO, 2820 would be considered. And if HP1 is DLO, 1610 would be considered. Fine. Now coming to the SO provision. Now here the limit of 2 lakhs, the 30,000, the qua assessee, the qua property, everything would be considered. Now here, remember HP1 and 3 have satisfied all the 4 conditions. So, yes, Bhavna Beda, let out and deemed to be let out have same provisions with one difference. If your property is actually let out, then while computing GAV, you have 2 figures to compare, ER and AR. So if the property is let out, you have both the figures to compare while calculating GAV, Bhavna. But if the property is deemed to be let out, you have only one figure, that is only ER is there because you have not actually let out, so there is no AR. Besides this, for all other things, DLO and LO have same provisions. Now students, pay attention. Now HP1 and HP3, both are eligible for higher limit. That is for this interest, and for this interest, the limit is up to 2 lakhs. But here, for HP2, the maximum limit is only 30K because HP2 has not satisfied the condition. Now, here I have to consider these two as self-occupied. So the loss, which is the interest, which I can consider for HP2 is up to 30,000. I hope this is clear. And HP1 is anyways eligible for the higher limit of 2 lakhs. I repeat, HP1 is eligible for the higher limit of 2 lakhs. Now, since I've already considered 30,000 here, I will consider 1,70,000 here for HP1 towards the interest portion, which will become loss. Why it will become loss? Because in this particular case, whatever is the interest becomes loss because everything else is nil. Similarly, if I go to this case, here HP1 and HP3 are self-occupied. Both are eligible for limit of 2 lakhs, out of which here the interest is 3.5, here the interest is 80. If I take 80 interest of HP2, of HP3, which is entirely my loss, the total limit which I have is of 2 lakhs. So the deduction which I can claim for HP1 interest is 1,20,000. Similarly, if I come here in these two properties which are SO, this property 2 is eligible for a limit of 30,000. So I've taken 30,000, but this property 3 is eligible for a limit of 2 lakhs. However, the amount which is available over here is only 80,000. So here I can consider maximum 80,000. Now, these would be my calculation for interest deduction, where I will have more than 2 HPs as self-occupied. If more than 2 is self-occupied, I can consider any 2 as self-occupied and the remaining would be considered as DLO. Now I will make computation of total HP income or loss, and whichever is most beneficial, I will select that option. Now here 170 and 32 lakhs loss and 2870 is income. So my final net HP income is 2870. Here it is again 2 lakhs loss minus this. So it is 2620. And here the interest is 110. Here it is 1610. So my final is 15 lakhs. Now out of this, since my total HP income is lowest here, my option selected is this. That is, I will consider this option as final, option 3, and I will file my return as per option 3. Same computation in the new or the default regime. Let me just complete this, then I will take your questions. So calculation of HP income or loss. Option 1, option 2, option 3. Same HP1, HP3, SO, SO, DLO, SO, SO, DLO, DLO, SO, Yes. Now in the new scheme, I don't get any deduction in case the property is self-occupied. So this will be nil. Only I will get the DLO income which I have computed above. Again, this is nil. And I'll only get the DLO income which I have computed above. Again, this is nil. And I will only get the DLO income which I have computed above. So in this scenario, my final HP income would be this 3070, 2820 and 1610. Again, if I'm in the new scheme, still for me the beneficial option is this. That is, I will select option 3 and file my return as per option 3. Now this is the whole working. Now I'm sure there would be doubts, questions relating to interest. Let us take it one by one. So Tambeshwari, go ahead, beta.
Yes, sir. Sir, in old regime computation, I don't understand, sir.
Yes, nobody has understood, beta. Don't worry. So see, this is my old regime working, right? I'll just enlarge it for your benefit. Now see, students, what is confusing is, how do I get this 170, right?
Yes, sir.
So please understand, everyone, pay attention. HP1 and HP3 are eligible for higher limit of 2 lakhs because they have satisfied all the 4 conditions, but HP2 has not. So HP2 will be eligible only for maximum limit of 30. Now, the interesting point is, for HP2 the limit is 30, but for other two the limit is 2 lakhs. Now, how to apply this? See, the simple rule is, wherever the limit is less, I will first use that limit. So in this case, when my HP1 and 2 are self-occupied, since HP2 is having a lower limit of 30,000, I'll take 30,000 here. Now, this 30,000 I have utilized for HP2. I hope this is clear to all, right? Now, for HP1, my total interest is 3.5 lakhs, out of which I can consider only up to 2 lakhs, which is the limit available for HP1. But that 2 lakhs also I cannot utilize fully because if you remember, I had mentioned these limits are qua assessee. Qua assessee means these limits are per assessee. For me, the total limit would be not exceeding 2 lakhs. So here, since 30,000 I have already used for HP2, I will use the balance out of 2 lakhs. How much is left? 170. So even though here for HP1, I was eligible for up to 2 lakhs interest, because HP1 has satisfied all the conditions. So I have paid interest of 3.5, but I am eligible for 2 lakhs. How much I can claim here is 170. I hope this is understood how I got 170 here, because this is a main confusing point for everyone. Is this clear, Tambeshwari?
No, sir. अभी भी नहीं समझ आया, sir. Sir, हिंदी में समझाओ ना एक बार.
हिंदी में समझाता हूँ बेटा. Second, where is the screen gone?
सर स्क्रीन बड़ी कर दो सर, छोटा छोटा दिखता है.
ठीक है, अभी तो बड़ा है ना बेटा.
मतलब सर छोटी कर दो, मतलब सभी एक साथ दिखना चाहिए ना सर, ऐसा.
बेटा फिर वो सभी दिखेगा तो फिगर्स दिखेंगे क्या आपको? ठीक है, नॉर्मल कर दी. ठीक है, मैं रिपीट करता हूं. देखिए, ये आपका एक्चुअल इंटरेस्ट है, करेक्ट?
यस सर.
अब क्या हो गया? यहां मैक्सिमम मैं 2 लाख ले सकता हूं.
हाँ सर.
यहां मैक्सिमम 30,000 ले सकता हूं.
यस सर.
यहाँ 2 लाख का लिमिट है, पर क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट ही 80,000 है तो यहाँ पे मैक्सिमम 80,000 ही ले सकता हूँ. पहले ये 3 बातें क्लियर हुई क्या?
सर लास्ट वाले के अंदर 80 लाख क्यों ले सकते हैं सर?
80,000 है बेटा.
यस सर, लेकिन सर इसके अंदर 30 लाख की लिमिट नहीं आएगी
बेटा. 2 लाख की लिमिट आएगी या 30,000 की आएगी, पहले ये बताओ. HP3 के लिए
सर 30 लाख की.
क्यों बेटा 30,000 की क्यों आएगी?
सर ये 80,000 30 लाख से ज्यादा है ना, मतलब 30,000 से.
बेटा आपकी 2 लाख की और 30,000 की लिमिट कैसे डिसाइड होती है? 4 कंडीशंस दिए, चारों कंडीशन सेटिस्फाई हुए तो लिमिट 2 लाख की है. 4 में से एक भी कंडीशन सेटिस्फाई नहीं हुआ तो लिमिट 30,000 की है, करेक्ट?
यस सर.
अब यहाँ पे क्या दिया है सम में, HP1 and 3 हैव सेटिस्फाइड ऑल द 4 कंडीशंस, यानी HP1 और 3 दोनों के लिए हायर लिमिट एलिजिबल है।
यस सर।
हायर लिमिट कितनी है
80 80
बेटा? हायर
80,000।
लिमिट 2 लाख है बेटा, हायर लिमिट इज 2 लाख। लिमिट्स दो
यस।
ही आपके पास, 30,000 और 2 लाख।
यस सर। यस सर।
समझ में आया?
यस सर।
समझ में आया क्या?
यस सर।
तो इन दोनों के लिए लिमिट 2 लाख है, मगर यहाँ पे मैंने 80,000 क्यों लिखा? क्योंकि जब मेरा एक्चुअल इंटरेस्ट ही 80,000 है तो मैं 2 लाख तो ले ही नहीं सकता ना।
यस सर। और
लिमिट इज
सर
2 लाख, मगर आप कितना ले सकते हो? आप सिर्फ उतना ही ले सकते हो जितना आपका मैक्सिमम इंटरेस्ट पेड है। आप इंटरेस्ट पेड से ज्यादा तो कभी भी डिडक्शन ले ही नहीं सकते ना। तो इधर
यस
मैं
सर।
80,000 ही ले सकता हूँ, इधर 30,000 ले सकता हूँ और इधर 2 लाख ले सकता हूँ। दिस इज द इंटरेस्ट जो मैं तीनों में ले सकता हूँ। ये समझ में आया? इधर
हाँ
2
सर।
लाख तक ले सकता हूँ, इधर 30,000 तक ले सकता हूँ, इधर 80,000 तक ले सकता हूँ। ये सबको समझ में आया कैसे?
यस सर, अभी समझ में आया सर।
ठीक है,
यस सर।
सबको क्लियर है ना? एवरीबडी इज क्लियर ना? नाउ ये जो लिमिट दी है 2 लाख और 30,000, अभी तो मैंने आपको इंडिविजुअल एचपी वाइज ये लिमिट दिखाई, मगर आपको ये लिमिट 2 प्रॉपर्टीज की मिला के होगी, राइट? ये 2 प्रॉपर्टीज की मिला के आपके लिए लिमिट होने वाली है। एंड दैट इज वाई, अब वो 2 प्रॉपर्टीज के लिए कैसे करना है, दैट इज व्हाट वी हैव टू चेक नाउ, कि 2 प्रॉपर्टीज की मिला के भी वही लिमिट आपको कैसे लेनी है। दैट इज व्हाट वी विल बी चेकिंग टुडे। अब ध्यान से देखिए, माई लिमिट इज 2 lakhs 30,000, 2 lakhs, but because here the actual interest is only 80, I cannot take 2 lakhs, I can take 80. This is my maximum interest deduction which I can take for one house property, जो मैंने तीनों के लिए आपको बताया। Now if you see what is covered here, आपको सिर्फ 2 सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड का ही बेनिफिट लेते आएगा। 2 से ज्यादा सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड रहा तो आपको उसको लेट आउट ही अज्यूम करना है। आई होप दिस इज ऑल्सो क्लियर टू एवरीवन। सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड आप 2 ही अज्यूम कर सकते हैं, 2 से आगे जितने भी प्रॉपर्टीज होंगे वो सारे लेट आउट माने जाएंगे। इज दिस क्लियर?
यस सर।
आई होप एवरीबडी इज ऑल्सो क्लियर ऑन दिस, कि इट इज नॉट दैट ऑल एचपीज जितने भी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड होंगे सभी को सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड मानेंगे। सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड आप सिर्फ 2 को ही मान सकते हैं, 2 से ज्यादा जो आएंगे उनको आपको लेट आउट ही मानना पड़ेगा, जिसे हम बोलते हैं डीम टू बी लेट आउट। अब अगर 2 को ही सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड मानना है तो कौन से 2 को सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड मानना है, ये आपका चॉइस है। तो पहला ऑप्शन है, मैंने पहले 2 को सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड माना तो तीसरा डीम लेट आउट हो गया। दूसरे ऑप्शन में पहले और तीसरे को सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड माना तो दूसरा डीम लेट आउट हो गया। और तीसरे ऑप्शन में दूसरे और तीसरे को मैंने सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड माना तो पहला डीम टू बी लेट आउट हो गया। तो मेरे पास ये 3 ऑप्शन आएंगे, इसके अलावा तो और कोई ऑप्शन आने नहीं है। अब ये ऑप्शन आने के बाद डीम टू बी लेट आउट का तो इनकम जो हमने कंप्यूट किया वो मैंने एज इट इज कॉपी कर लिया। इसमें तो कुछ नहीं करना है, ये सिंपल है। ये तो ठीक है।
यस सर, यहाँ तक समझ में आया सर।
अब मेन सारा गड़बड़ जो सभी को कंफ्यूजन होता है, पहली बार जब मैंने भी ये कॉन्सेप्ट पढ़ा था, सीखा था, मुझे भी हुआ था, वो थोड़ा सा उससे प्रैक्टिस करके थोड़ा उसको वापस पढ़ के वो समझ में आया कि मेरे लिए दोनों एचपी मिला के ही लिमिट देखना है। जो मैंने आपको लिमिट बताया था 2 लाख, दैट इज क्वा असेसी। क्वा असेसी मीन्स इट इज फॉर द असेसी, नॉट फॉर द प्रॉपर्टी। अगर मेरे लिए प्रॉपर्टी वाइज वो लिमिट होता ना तो मेरे को आज इतना कंफ्यूजन होता ही नहीं था, पर वो लिमिट प्रॉपर्टी वाइज नहीं है, वो मेरे लिए, मेरे एक इंसान के लिए वो लिमिट है 2 लाख। अब मुझे पहले सिनेरियो में इन दोनों को सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड मानना है। तो ये चीज तो आपको मान के चलनी है कि 2 लाख से ज्यादा तो आपका डिडक्शन हो ही नहीं सकता, क्योंकि मुझे मैक्सिमम लिमिट कितना अलाउ किया है लॉ ने, मुझे इस असेसी को 2 लाख। तो 2 लाख से ज्यादा तो मेरा लिमिट हो ही नहीं सकता। अब मैंने क्या किया, वो 2 लाख के लिए मैंने इस प्रॉपर्टी का जो 30,000 में ले सकता था लिया। इस प्रॉपर्टी में मैं 2 लाख ले सकता हूं, मगर 2 लाख लिया तो क्या हो जाएगा, दोनों का टोटल 2 लाख को एक्सीड हो जाएगा, जो गलत हो जाएगा। तो दोनों का टोटल 2 लाख बना रहे, इसलिए मैंने इस प्रॉपर्टी में कितना इंटरेस्ट ले लिया, 170। इसी को मैं आपको दूसरे ऑप्शन से सॉल्व करके दिखाता हूं ताकि आपको शायद उसका फर्क समझ में आए। सो लेट मी चेंज द कलर ऑफ माई इंक। अब इसी को मैं ऐसे भी सॉल्व कर सकता था कि मैं यहां पे कुछ ना लूं। इट इज नॉट अलाउइंग मी टू चेंज द कलर। ठीक है, आप थोड़ा ध्यान दीजिए। यहां पे दूसरा ऑप्शन है, मैं यहां पे कुछ ना लूं और यहां पे पूरा 2 lakhs ले लूं। दिस इज ऑल्सो एन ऑप्शन पॉसिबल। ये दोनों ही आंसर हो सकते हैं फर्स्ट ऑप्शन में। मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट क्या है, मुझे टोटल 2 लाख एक्सीड नहीं करना है, दैट इज द की पॉइंट। अब अगर मुझे 2 लाख एक्सीड नहीं करना है तो मैं ऐसे भी कर सकता हूं कि मैं यहां पे 170 और यहां पे 30 ले लूं, या यहां पे 2 lakhs और यहां पे 0 लूं। अभी समझ में आई ये बात?
हाँ सर, मतलब सर यही था कि सर हम इसके अंदर 2 लाख क्यों नहीं लिया फर्स्ट, ऐसा सर।
वैसा भी कर सकते हो, दैट इज योर ऑप्शन।
ओके सर।
नाउ इफ आई गो टू द सेकेंड ऑप्शन, वापस एक जो मैंने लिया है 120 और 80, और अगर ऐसा नहीं करना है तो मेरे पास दूसरा ऑप्शन यहां पे भी क्या आएगा, मैं पहले प्रॉपर्टी में ही पूरा 2 लाख ले लेता हूं, फिर दूसरे के लिए कुछ नहीं बचेगा। इन एनी केस मैं 2 लाख से ज्यादा डिडक्शन नहीं ले सकता हूं, दैट इज द बॉटम लाइन। क्या ये बात समझ में आई?
हाँ सर, ये भी समझ आया अभी।
I hope everybody else is also clear with both these options, option 1 and option 2. The most important point is I cannot exceed 2 lakhs. Now coming to option 3. अब ऑप्शन 3 में यहां पे मैक्सिमम 30 ले सकता हूं, यहां पे 80 ले सकता हूं। तो ये तो 30 और 80 दोनों आ जाएगा, क्योंकि ये दोनों मिला के भी 2 लाख के नीचे रहने वाला है। सो यहाँ का ये 30 और 80 दोनों ही एप्लीकेबल है, दोनों ही आ जाएगा। इज दिस क्लियर?
यस सर। सर
कोई डाउट?
अगर यस सर, अगर सर मतलब कि दो दो ऑप्शन में हो सकता है, मतलब आप किसी भी ऑप्शन से कर सकते हैं।
करेक्ट,
राइट सर?
आपका 2 लाख को एक्सीड नहीं होना चाहिए, आपने ध्यान रखना है। फिर आप किसी
यस
भी
सर।
ऑप्शन से करिए।
ओके सर। और सर डिफॉल्ट रिजीम में तो कोई प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है सर।
अभी उस पर मैं आता हूं। सो ये हो गया आपका वर्किंग अंडर द न्यू रेजिम, सॉरी अंडर द ओल्ड रेजिम। In new regime, the law is very simple. They are saying that we will not allow any deduction if the property is self-occupied. So there is no question of limit of 2 lakhs or 30,000 or qua assessee or qua property, because for self-occupied there is no deduction. तो जो डिडक्शन आपको अब तक मिल रहा था वो अब आपको नहीं मिलेगा सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड में। आपका सिर्फ डीम टू बी लेट आउट का ही इनकम आएगा। दिस इज व्हाट इज द न्यू रेजिम। देयर इज नो डिडक्शन फॉर सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी, सो सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी अमाउंट विल बी नील। Manvi is asking me, sir, how you get standard deduction? But a standard deduction is 30% of NAV. आपका जो भी इधर NAV आया ना, इसका 30% आप निकालिए। ये जो NAV आया उसका 30% निकालिए, जो NAV आया उसका 30% निकालिए। दैट इज स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन। यस बेटा हार्दिक, प्लीज गो अहेड। आई होप एवरीबडी अंडरस्टूड दिस।
Sir, I have a doubt in pre-construction period. Can I ask, sir?
Yes, please.
Sir, in case B, sir, the completion date was 1/1/2026.
Correct.
1st January 2026. Sir, if it would have been 1/5/2026, then our period would be ended on 31st March. For the completion period would be 31/3/2026. Am I correct, sir?
Correct.
So, sir, the starting date of the loan was 1/8/2020 to 31/3/2026. So, sir, it would have crossed 5 years for a pre-construction period. So,
Okay.
sir, then we will provide pre-construction period interest or not?
What is where, beta, there is a restriction of 5 years? Tell me.
Sir, like pre-construction period is for 1/5 times, 1/5.
Beta, that is afterwards, na? That you have to take deduction in 5 years. It is not going backward that the pre-construction period can be of 5 years. Pre-construction period can be of any years. The deduction of pre-construction interest is taken over 5 years.
Okay, sir. Previously, it could be any number of years.
Correct. So pre-construction, there is no limit. Pre-construction can be any number of years, but the
Yes.
deduction is taken in 5 years.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. No got it. Thank you, sir.
Okay? Yes.
हाँ जी.
अनिरुद्ध is asking, sir, अगर HP3 में भी 2 लाख से ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट ऑन लोन है तो भी हम बस 2 लाख का डिडक्शन लेंगे को assessee. Yes, बेटा. The total deduction for one assessee cannot exceed 2 lakhs in a year for self-occupied property. So you're right, Aniruddha. So students, I hope you all have understood all these scenarios, right? Now, this was the most technical scenario according to me. जो बाकी के scenarios है, they are pretty simple, but I think we have completed our time. So we will stop over here in my next lecture, which is actually where we start with PGBP. First half an hour, I'll complete the remaining scenarios, which are very simple. There is no much technicalities in that. So we'll first complete that, and then we will start with PGBP. I hope this is fine with all. I hope you all understood everything. Today we dealt with one of the most interesting and technical computations in the income tax subject, that is of pre-construction interest. But if you remember that one sentence golden rule, what was that? Anything before current year interest is pre-construction. You will get all the answers. Even though the language may be technical, even though the working may be technical, just remember this. Before current year is pre-construction. That's it. Fine, students? Excellent. So we conclude our today's session over here with some part to be completed in the next lecture, but then that is simple. There is no much technicalities involved in that. So thank you very much for your interaction, because the more you interact, the more I'm able to clarify your doubts. So keep reading, keep solving more sums, and keep asking doubts like this. If there is more alternatives, then have check all alternatives. Yes, but if there are 4 house properties, you'll have 4 alternatives. So you'll have to check 4. But please understand, but in exams, they will not make it 4, 5, because then they cannot allot that much marks. That is why it will be maximum 3. So don't worry for that, that you'll have 4, 5 alternatives and you'll have to check so many. That institute will never do. Correct? Because see, they have to also ensure that it is done. They are setting a paper which should be possible to be solved by an average student in 3 hours. So they cannot put a question which will itself, one question will consume half an hour or 45 minutes. Normal. Fine, beta? So thank you all. Let us close our session here.